Sometimes the hardest things in our lives are not punishments, they're assignments. They're opportunities disguised as wounds. They're moments where God allows us to stand in front of something that has existed for generations and decide whether it continues or it ends. John 21:22. After his resurrection, Jesus had a conversation with Peter. And it wasn't an easy conversation. Jesus tells Peter about the suffering he will endure. He tells Peter about the cost of following him. And Peter immediately does what most of us would do. He looks at somebody else. Peter turns and sees John, and he asks, "Lord, what about him?" In other words, what is his future? What is his assignment? Why does his path look different from mine? Every one of us has a John. Someone whose life seems easier. Someone who received opportunities that we didn't receive. Someone who appears to have gotten the blessing, the promotion, the recognition, or the breakthrough that we were hoping for. And if we're not careful, comparison quietly begins to grow. But there are inheritances that never appear in a will. Some people inherit resources. Others inherit wisdom. Some inherit property. Others inherit perspective. And perhaps one of the greatest inheritances a person can ever receive is freedom from the things that have bound generations before them. The enemy loves patterns that repeat themselves. Fear passes down. Bitterness passes down. Anger passes down. Comparisons pass down. The same wounds quietly traveling from one generation to the next because cycles survive when nobody recognizes them. Not every inheritance is intentional. Sometimes people pass down what was passed down to them. Sometimes they give away wounds they were never meant to give away. And often the most destructive patterns continue because nobody ever stops long enough to question them. Everything changes when someone becomes aware. Because once a pattern is recognized, a choice becomes possible. The cycle can continue, or the cycle can end. Love chooses a different response. Love refuses to hand the wound to the next person. And this may be the hardest realization of all. The test isn't the person we're comparing ourselves to. The test isn't the person who received something different. The test isn't the person whose path looks easier. The test isn't them. The real question is, who are you becoming while somebody else's story unfolds? Will you become bitter? Will you become resentful? Will you become consumed by comparison? Or will you become the kind of person who trusts God with an assignment that doesn't look like anyone else's? Jesus never really answered Peter's question about John. Peter asked, "What about him?" Jesus responded, "You follow me." Because Peter's greatest obstacle was not John. Peter's greatest obstacle was Peter. And perhaps that's true for us as well. Every generation is given a choice to repeat what it received or to transform it, to pass on a wound or to pass on the healing, to continue the cycle or to end it. And maybe that's why Jesus never answered Peter's question, because somebody else's assignment was never Peter's responsibility. His responsibility was simply to follow. And perhaps the greatest victories in life happen when we stop asking, "What about him?" and start asking, "Am I following Jesus Christ?" Because cycles are broken one choice at a time. And freedom begins the moment someone decides it ends here.